you can go read someone's strategy on life or business or whatever, but when you go read 4 different people's strategy, you start to see common denominators, like things that they do similarly. And they're all a little bit different. Everyone got their own way. But when we look at that, that was when I was like, oh my gosh, I can go start a PayPal or a SpaceX or something that, if I'm 1 in a million, I'll make it. Or I can go, you know, after the 3 basic needs, food, water, and shelter.
Yeah.
Well, gee, Jeff Bezos has a pretty good monopoly on food and water. So why don't I go work on shelter? And that was, I really started to see that common denominator and really, how those economics worked.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am your host, Yona Weiss, and with me today, I am extremely excited to be talking to Chad Sutton because he is someone that I just love what he's doing. His story is great. I've already interviewed one of his partners, Erin Hudson. You can go check that out on episode number, whatever it was, but just scroll through, you'll find it. And excited, hopefully, to interview some of his other partners as well, because they're just an incredible team. Quattro Capital, which was founded recently. A little context about Chad. He is a recovering engineer. And so we're going to get into that, how he left corporate America to become full-time real estate investor, full speed ahead. Chad, how are you today?
You surprised me on that one, Yona. If I have to follow Erin, I'm going to hang up right now. That woman is spectacular. No, Yona, I am blessed to be alive today. I am, enjoying explosive growth in a company during one of the country's most disruptive periods since World War II. I'm very proud of our team, proud of the mindset, and proud to have the healthy family that I do. So we can dive into that as much as you want.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I'm just grateful for you to be joining me today. And we talked with Erin, and not to have any, kind of a repetition here, but we talked a lot about team, and we talked about a lot about the power of having team members that are laser focused on what they're good at, so you can complement one another. Right. And whoever's, listening to the audio doesn't see the video of Chad just shaking his head up and down, because it's so true. I think that's what makes you great. But before we get to that, I want to give a little more context. And we talked about the recovering engineer. But what was that about? I mean, you work for NASA. Okay.
Yes,
and I mean, everyone knows what NASA is, but not everyone knows what it means to work for NASA as an engineer, and what that means to go through corporate America, climb up the ladder, and then one day look down and say, what am I doing here? And then totally change their mind. I mean, most people who don't understand real estate probably think you're crazy, or thought you were crazy.
Many people still think I'm crazy. I still get calls asking, hey, do you want to come back to work? Are you doing okay? I'm like, no. Yeah. So, really quickly, I mean, I was born into the typical, American working class household. I was given the American dream that you go to school, you make good grades, you go to college, a decent college, hopefully, get a good job, and work till you're 65. That's what I knew. Mm-hmm. And I did that, I was very good at following the rules. I made great grades in high school. I went to University of Tennessee in Knoxville, go Vols. That's been a tough football team to follow lately, by the way. And got an engineering degree because that was what I was told I was going to do, because I just always exhibited those traits for good, for better, or for worse. And yeah, I right place, right time, walked into a position with NASA at Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Spent some years working for them back when the space shuttle was still flying. So I was on the tail end of that. And when we were starting to develop what is now the Falcon project for SpaceX, that was sold to SpaceX after I left NASA, and they of course made it awesome.
Right.
Not detracting from them at all, but that was the groundwork of a rocket we worked on, and really enjoyed that. And about that time, that's when a new administration came into office. And if any of you are space nerds out there, it takes about 8 years to get a product developed, tested, man-rated, able to send people to space, because everything is triple redundant. And the second you kill an astronaut, it's over, right?
Right, for sure.
So the problem is our administrations are typically 4 years or less, or 4 years, or 4 to 8 years rather.
Right.
And so that turnover happens a lot. Well, the space shuttle was ended. That project was cut. And I found myself looking for a job and found one before I was laid off and went to work for General Electric. And I was there for, several years after that. That was where I really became more of an engineer. So working for NASA, yes, I was an engineer, but I was more like a project manager, right? All the
Mm,
real engineering work at that point was hired out to contractors because
interesting.
with the ebbs and flows in the administration, NASA just can't really keep that many high, decorated engineers on staff. So I was really more of a project manager. It wasn't until I became an engineer for General Electric that I was really a hardcore nuts and bolts, draw things on paper and build it
Right.
engineer. And that was really cool, for a little while. So let me pause there. Do you want
Yeah,
to
sure.
dive into more of the engineering part or keep going until I got out?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, the engineering part is fascinating. That's something that I think a lot of people don't have the insight into what
Mm,
goes into that. But
yeah,
I think the real kicker for people is like, well, you were making good money,
I was.
had a good family, you were doing, all the right moves that America is telling you you have to do. You have a 401k, right? You're putting
Yeah.
away money for your
At a
retirement.
401k. Let me tell you the good advice I listened to, right? So the good advice that I was told to practice, I went and got a great job. I designed rocketry and aircraft engines. I mean, what cooler job? It was great. I
Right.
literally I can tell you a story about throwing birds, like dead birds, a cannon that launched birds into aircraft engines to make sure they didn't, crash or break, because that really happens in the sky. So that was my job.
Wow.
I mean,
Okay.
pretty cool stuff. But yeah, I rose through the ranks. I was making great money. My wife is much smarter than I am, by the way. I married up and better looking,
Good for you.
and and she's in the medical field and is also making wonderful money. And we had high tax bills. We had student loans that you wouldn't believe. We had fancy car payments. We had a house payment. We had not really any consumer debt, but just insert American debt here, right? We
Right.
had it. And so I looked down at one point and man, we were probably 5 years into our career, grossing over a quarter million a year. And we weren't any better than when we started off. I was like, what is wrong here? What is going on?
Right.
And, I mean, we saved a little bit, but then of course you're told don't go pay off your student loans that are at 4%. Go invest that money and make 6%. And guess what? You're making 2%. Well, that's not helping anybody, right? So we had this crushing debt. We had investments that weren't hardly performing. And I was so frustrated before I left corporate America. I was a real estate investor before I left corporate America. And I tried for almost 2 years to get that. I had a couple $100,000 in a 401k and I couldn't get it out for the life of me. It was
Really.
stuck there until I left that employer. So yeah, I just felt trapped. This is kind of what it was, and that's when it was time to make a change.
But you had the foresight, and I guess maybe did you have people in your life that had given you some of that, open that door into the real estate world that allowed you to experience that? I mean, you said you had started to try to get involved in real estate for a
Hmm.
couple of years before you left, but
Yeah.
where did that come from? I mean, most people don't
Well,
have that.
yeah. At the time, it was self-inflicted because I went and read a book you guys have probably never read. It's called Rich Dad Poor Dad. Robert Kiyosaki. Ever
Heard
heard
of
of it?
it? Heard of it?
But so just like many people, I picked up that book. An entrepreneur friend of mine said, hey, read this, because I mentioned to him, man, I always wanted to be in business for myself. Went and read that, and that's kind of where the paradigm shift happened, and I started to be able to think about money differently, and that led to, oh my gosh, websites and YouTube videos and books and everything I could get my hands on about how people create wealth.
Right.
And that common denominator, I mean, for those of you who read a lot, you can go read someone's strategy on life or business or whatever, but when you go read four different people's strategy, you start to see common denominators, like things that they do similarly, and they're all a little bit different. Everyone got their own way. But when we look at that, that was when I was like, oh my gosh, I can go start a PayPal or a SpaceX or something that, if I'm one in a million, I'll make it. Or I can go, you know, after the three basic needs, food, water, and shelter.
Yeah.
Well, gee, Jeff Bezos has a pretty good monopoly on food and water. So why don't I go work on shelter? And that was, I really started to see that common denominator and really, how those economics worked. So that was the start. And then simultaneously, I lost a family member who was, patriarch of the family, my grandfather, huge influence on me in my life. And, later in life, after he was terminated at the top level, he was the second to the CEO type for a large company. And, the target on your back just gets bigger the farther up you climb. And eventually they had a spat and he was pushed out.
Wow.
And, I watched him, take money out of his 401k, go invest it in real estate. And I didn't really know what he was doing. He told me he did this. I didn't know why or what it was. Had no idea about income property. And then it all started to click. And when he passed away, my now business partner, Kim Windland, who is, probably the brain of the group here, she took that business from one that was in decline when he got sick to, over 140% increase in profits within a year.
Wow.
So it was like, oh my gosh, this works, So that's really where it began, man.
That's incredible. And so Kim, just for context, is your aunt, right?
She is.
So she inherited a lot of that real estate from your grandfather.
Well, actually, she didn't inherit anything. The matriarch is still living,
okay.
so she has it. But Kim kind of got her asset management chops that way. It was like, okay, well, we need to make sure her retirement income's there, and so she was in a great position. Had recently left, her corporate awesome, career. She was a Fortune 50 executive for many years as well in the IT world. So a very smart lady had recently just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Timing was perfect because she got to be there, 100% in the last days. And then she was positioned to catch when she needed to take over. And so it was really there's no better way to learn how to run property than when you can't fail. Like literally, if you fail,
you have no choice.
yeah. If you fail, there is no failure. So
and that's incredible because that's how we're challenged in many ways in life, and everyone faces challenges.
Yes.
But the challenges we're faced, and this is something I was actually just thinking about this morning, is the challenges we're given, and God tests us in so many different ways. And we will learn from the Bible in many places that
that's right.
We never get a challenge that we can't actually overcome, because the reason we're given those challenges is to overcome and become something that we have already the potential inside of us to be, but we just don't know it's there. And
That's
so
right.
I think it's a perfect example. When something's thrown in your place and you have no choice, you get it done. Like that's just something innate inside of us to do. And I think if we faced or approached challenges in that light, I think we would accomplish so much more in such a faster, turnaround than, a lot of us currently get stuck in challenges, and we get stuck and we think we're failing, and we think,
right,
I can't do this, or I can't overcome this, and it's too much. And really it's just there to help us, because we wouldn't get that challenge in the first place if we weren't able to overcome it. I mean, think about like a parallel, and I was just thinking about this also, like a child when they're, and you have children also, Chad, right? That
yes.
When they're ready to walk, okay, they don't know they're ready to walk. They don't know they can do it. But you put them in a challenge, right? And hold them and go away from them a few feet to have them try to come towards you, and they fall and they, get upset and they hurt, but they can do it. They can't fathom they can actually do that. And so they see it as a challenge, or they see it as a failure, falling, but you're only giving them that challenge at the moment when they're ready. Right.
That is such a great analogy. And the good father gives you he sees that you can do it. He knows you can do it, but you don't know that. And so you feel like you're falling and skinning your knee and all that. But you know what? You grow through those times. And it is when times are hard that you earn your battle scars, you learn, and then you're better, right? Exactly. Whatever that is. And I've got plenty of stories of that, by the way. But I mean, I've heard this in a country song, I think, right? The good Lord gave us mountains so we can learn how to climb,
It's great.
That's
awesome. That's so true. Yeah, absolutely. So that's incredible. So you shifted, just a little more your story, right? Shifted in that. And now you bought some real estate, bought some multifamily investment properties. And in the last 12 months or so, you guys have created Quattro Capital.
Yes.
In less than 12 months. But in the last 12 months, you have, in a pandemic where a lot of people were talking about the market crashing and people were worried about, real estate having a really bad investment, because right now people aren't going to be paying rent, especially rental property. You guys went all in, basically.
Yes, we leaned in.
And getting back to, that people looking at you thinking you're crazy, but tell me about what happened to you guys, your team collectively coming together in the course of 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have this saying in Nashville that it takes 10 years to become an overnight sensation. Okay. Because everyone sees your success when you hit the spotlight, but no one sees the time you put in before that.
Right.
Right. So yes, Quattro Capital was founded in 2020. The entities that make up that joint venture, it is a joint venture. So Dr. Erin Hudson is one of the members. Maurice Philogene, another fantastic 18-year real estate investor. And God, what has he not done? He's
Hmm.
awesome. And then my entity, which is Kim, Tammy, who's my mother, and Kim is her sister, my aunt, and then Chad. So we are five managing partners. And that's kind of how so we came together by meeting through common channels. We eventually did a deal together. That deal closed in the beginning of January 2020, right?
Hmm.
It was not everyone's first deal. It was our first deal together.
Right.
And we bought that, just within the partners. It was a joint venture of us five, no one else. So we did not take on investors. And that was really a benefit is, I think all of us had our own, success a little bit before we came together and we're like, oh my gosh, like Erin talked about in her episode, you got to put aces in their places. And we figured out, wow, these individuals complement us in areas we're deficient and vice versa.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, a company started to form, not just a group of guys or a group of people who like to invest in real estate, but it really became a real estate private equity company, right? We
Mm.
stopped behaving like just a group and we started behaving like a company. And, we are now organized. We have titles, we have, key responsibilities, and everyone carries their part of the ship. And this is something you can do alone, but do you really want to? Like, we closed 8 deals, 8 multifamily properties in 2020 during a pandemic, which was the worst disruption in the United States of America since World War II. People were scared. People were worried. People thought people that renters would not pay rent.
Right.
Lenders would default. I mean, all this stuff. The chicken littles were everywhere. But guys, when you step back and you just look at the forest for the trees, right? And you think about the demographics, you think about the fact that not enough building permits are going to be pulled in the next 20 years to handle the affordability crisis. And when you start looking at the shifts of
Hmm.
COVID exacerbated it. People are flooding from New York and California to Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama, where we invest,
Hmm.
because it is cheaper to live. The business environment is better. Taxes are lower. They just got fed up with it, so that demographic shift that was already happening towards the South and the Mid-South, it just exacerbated it. So sure, there are some places like Seattle and New York and places in California and Nevada and wherever
Right.
else where people hadn't paid rent since March, but that is not the case in the markets. It is market to market. And, it really helps to be in markets where it's a landlord friendly state, not because we're trying to evict people in their time of need, but because residents have the mindset that renting an apartment is a privilege. It is not
Hmm.
a right, you know?
Yes.
And so for those who reached out to us, there were some that had trouble. We organized a payment plan. We helped them find assistance. Like, it's a team relationship here. You don't want to evict someone when they're down, but for those who try to game the system, oh, we got you. Like we don't stand for that. So it's like it's all about helping people when they
Sure.
need to be helped, and that's really how we built the business. Is it's more about people and property than it is about profits, and from
Absolutely.
there profits come. So.
Absolutely. So maybe share one kind of war story, because obviously nothing is as exciting as it actually sounds, right? There's nothing is all you know
It was
uh
hard.
yeah, not it's not all fanfare. It's not all like, oh, this is all great. It's a business, and
Yeah.
when you're dealing with people and communities, and now scaling up to hundreds of residents
Hmm.
across multiple properties. And again, 8 properties closed in 2020 alone. It's just
Yes.
incredible, and you guys are just going forward now in 2021. So give me at least one war story from 2020 that you guys encountered.
Sure. Sure. Well, the biggest one that this keeps coming to mind, it happened to us on March 18th. And if you remember March 18th, that is when COVID officially showed up in America and the stock market just exploded, right?
Mhm.
Everything got turned upside down. The lockdown started to happen. We were in Oh, we had about $250,000 hard on a 70 unit portfolio in East Tennessee. And we were buttoning up the loan. We were finishing it up. We had a 1031 structure with it, with one large investor. We were 12 days from closing. We're done, right? We're finishing it up.
Right.
we get a letter from or not a letter, a call from the mortgage broker saying, "Hey, the lender's pulling out of the deal." What the heck do you mean the lender's pulling out of the deal? Like, did I hear you right? Sadly, our seller heard about it from a third party person, a third party that was doing like a radon test or something. They were on site picking up the tests, and he was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, the deal's off. The lender's backing out." And so our seller unfortunately heard about it before we did, which was unacceptable. So here we are 12 days before close on a 70 unit value add portfolio. Pandemic has just started. We've got $250,000 hard, and we just lost a $4 million lender. It was a big deal. So you want to talk about freaking out, not knowing what to do.
Right.
So had to get our composure, and I'm watching our time here. I may need to shorten the story, but in general, it took 20 16-hour days. Every day we would call new lenders. Every day 3 more would stop lending. It was like following a boulder down the hill. The market was seizing up. And eventually on the last day, like we were having a lot of midnight gut checks. Like, look, do we even still want to do this deal? The money's getting expensive. Can we really, invest our own money and that of investors right now? Or should we just take a personal loss? And we were prepared to take a personal loss and to protect our investors, and it almost came to that. On the last day, we were going to make 5 more phone calls, and then we're going to call it, because we had another extension. Every time we extended, this guy was making it more expensive,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so on the last day, the 5th call that I made was to a nonprofit lender. I didn't know she was a nonprofit lender. Come to find out, that money was not affected, and we wound up with better terms than we started with.
Wow.
with a nonprofit, mission-driven lender who this fit perfectly into. And we've since done 3 deals with them. But you know what we learned though? Number one, you visualize something, you're going to get it done, right? But number 2, we learned that you need to be interviewing your debt partners just as hard as they're interviewing you, because we never thought to ask, where's your money coming from?
Mm-hmm.
The lender that backed away was a securitized lender. They just originate like 50 million in loans, package them up in a little box, and go sell it on the market and to their investors. Same way like what we're doing in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start understanding where the money comes from, you start understanding what markets drive them. And we knew that this lender got their money from banks, because banks would give them the money. They would lend it out to mission-driven projects, but the government would give them a tax credit, the bank a tax credit for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't care if the loan was making money or not. They needed that tax credit,
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
Yeah, man, when you are in the trenches and you are just fighting for life, that's when you learn things,
That's when you learn. Absolutely. And I would say another really important lesson there is, just the incredible, providence, I would call it, of just, you saw you made up your mind, right? We're going to do this last day. We're going to call it quits. Let's just do these next 5 calls. And that was it. And it was meant to be. Like, that was meant to come together.
Have you ever seen that picture? It's like a cartoon picture where they're digging in the ground and like they're like literally this far from the jewels, and they turn around and walk away. It's like, it could have been that. So.
It's true. But, on the other hand, it's a risk, right? And you guys were prepared to take that loss. It's a big hit. I mean, we're talking, that's a large sum of money to just have to.
Yeah. It wouldn't have ruined us, but I mean, that hurts no matter who you are.
Absolutely.
So.
For sure. Incredible. Well, we could keep going all day, but I want to jump into the final 4 over here, Chad. First question we ask all our guests is, what's the worst job you've ever had?
The worst job that I've ever had was bussing tables at a restaurant. And the reason, this is coming from someone who's even shoveled. I've been a stable boy. I've shoveled horse manure, so that was not that bad of a job. That actually taught me a lot more than this. That was where I was bottom of the barrel. I got no share of the tip pool, and I had to put up with not only the BS from the clients who thought they were better than everybody, because this was an upscale restaurant, but also the waiters who thought they were better than the busboy. So it was just an experience of, here's what being a cockroach in the restaurant feels like. Wow. And never wanted that again.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah, that's a bad one. I don't blame you for moving on from that to bigger and better.
I was 15 to be fair, so.
Sure, context there. What is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Well, I promised you not to say Rich Dad Poor Dad because I know everyone has read that book.
But you already said earlier that it gave you a paradigm shift. So
It did give me a paradigm shift, but there's more, right? So there's a book called The Honeybee, and it's written by the Jake and Gino guys, Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbero. I got it as a gift when I joined their program as one of our mini education deals. And what's beautiful about it is it kind of had a Rich Dad Poor Daddy feel to it, but it was talking about the beekeeper and the honey, and it really starts to talk about how you generate that stream of income and how you don't get distracted by building a new stream. You build some tributaries to that, right? So you wind up with a raging river that has all these little bitty I'm doing stuff on camera like they're gonna be able to see this,
right.
it has all these little side streams that run into it, right? And so it talks about the evolution of an entrepreneur from the first realization where you have the paradigm shift all the way to what happens later in years. And this is from someone who's lived it. And it was the one time where, man, I read a book and I was like in tears sometimes. Like I remembered that feeling. I remembered being at chapter 2. I remembered being at chapter 4. And then I got to chapter 7 and I was like, wait, this is where I am today. Oh my God, what's going to happen to my life? And I couldn't stop reading it.
Wow.
So it was a really good read, and for anyone who's an aspiring entrepreneur, I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Gonna check that one out. I didn't even know that existed. That's great. Most of the books I hear on this, I've either read or heard of, and so it's always good to hear like something totally new. So I know
I think it came out like
guys
a year ago. It's not very old. So.
Right. Well, yeah, for sure. They haven't been around so long in their business. So, third question: what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I'm going to say who, not how. And anyone who's read that book will know what I'm talking about. That's another book, I guess. As a young entrepreneur and a doer, you find yourself thinking you can do things better than everyone else and thinking that if you don't touch it, it must be messed up, right? As we scale, that is not possible. And I'm having to learn, this sounds arrogant, but it's a growth, it's an immaturity is what it is.
Absolutely.
I'm having to learn to trust people as we scale to execute on my behalf, and learn to enable and coach people to work at their full potential. And like you were saying with the parent, it's letting them fail a little bit and course correcting, right? So that is a skill that most people don't tell you need when you're running a company. And I'm still, that's my 2020 goal, is their 2021 goal, is to really excel at that. And I grew it in 2020. But we are just getting too big to touch everything.
That's great. It's a good thing to have, a good thing to be challenged with is be growing fast. I'm feeling the same pains myself personally. So I'm looking for getting a full-time working on this month, not just 2021, January 2021, working on getting a full-time assistant, at least for me. But yeah, awesome. we gotta scale. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to be had. And you guys going forward, I mean, before we even get to the fourth question, what does 2021 look like for Quattro Capital?
I was on with our business coach, Trevor McGregor, yesterday with our team, and that is a fantastic individual, by the way, if y'all haven't met him. And we were talking about just that. And the team has decided that our 2020 looks like 7 to 12 deals. We're going to target one per month. We're targeting to have that where they can support their own payrolls. That's about 80 to 150 unit if you guys are knowledgeable in that space. And it's really to focus on, driving our assets to extreme profitability, maximizing distributions, and carving out enough to give back as well. So we're not only are we trying to do well for our investors and ourselves, but we really have a big philanthropy arm. And we want to see more dollars go to that in 2021. So lots of big goals.
Big goals to have. Big goals are great. Awesome.
BHAGs, right?
And with that, we'll end with the final question, which is, what does success mean to you?
Success to me, success is freedom. And that is freedom of time, freedom of relationship, freedom of passion, freedom of location, and freedom of finance. I mean, that first comes financial freedom, and then it enables all those others that I just mentioned.
Right.
So for us, I'm not about cash. I'm about cash flow. And, as the company grows, as our success builds, that only gets bigger and better. And then you have the freedom of who you want to spend your time with. You can literally work from anywhere in the world, or not work, take a few months off. I mean, but just, really prioritizing those freedoms as the company starts to grow. So, we're not building a job, we're building a company. While we're building Quattro, we are not Quattro. There are people behind it, right? And so as it builds into the machine that it is, being able to let the machine run and touch it appropriately when you need to, but then also really enjoy those 5 freedoms. So that's what success means to me. It's not about money. It's about freedom.
Awesome. I'm glad you have that so well articulated, because not a lot of people, understand that. And I think once you're in tune with what drives you, that really, you can go very, very far, way beyond what other people think. So
absolutely.
This has been an incredible, just an awesome conversation, Chad. I appreciate your time. Where can our listeners find you or reach out to you?
Yeah, the easiest way is going to be to go to our website. That's thequattroway.com, TheQuattroway.com. And I'm sure that'll be in the show notes, and they probably will edit out where I just spelled that, so that's fine. But yeah, if you go there, you can find all of our partners, click on us and reach out, book a time, whatever. We'd love to hear from you. We love talking about this stuff. So even if you just want to hop on a call and talk about the freedoms, we love doing that as well. But let's see if we can help each other.
Awesome. Thank you, Chad. Been a pleasure. Appreciate your time, and I wish you tremendous success this year and going forward.
Likewise, Yona, and I'll be calling you on some more cost segs here pretty soon.
Yeah, well, I look forward to that. And to all our listeners, don't forget, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.